Our first caller is named Kyle, and Kyle is calling from our homeland, or at least my homeland. Maybe you don't think of it as your homeland, but he's calling from Canada, from Vancouver. And he wants to talk about a very minor subject, the meaning of life and truth. He says religion has modeled things up to be hard to know the truth. Kyle, you're live on Truth Wanted. Can you tell us more?
Sure. I'd just like to start. I did call last week and had some connection issues and was cut off, but within my short conversation, I did use a outdated, not PC word because I was referencing a book that was from the 1800s, and that was the wording they used. So I just like to apologize to your listeners about anyone that I may have offended by using a word that shouldn't be in anyone's vocabulary.
Fair enough. Good to say it up front. I missed last week's show, so I am, clean slate. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, no. Well, not so much of a question. I'd like to talk about truth in a way, and I think we can have a non-religious discussion about truth and come up to a reasonable conclusion together.
Sure.
That's the goal, but I think because the truth is so elemental or elementary, we treat it as a truism, which truisms are statements that are obviously true that say nothing new or interesting. But I think because we don't exactly live that truth, we have a fair bit of cognitive dissonance where that truth may not be true to any of us as individuals today, but we can come to the realization of what that truth may be if we minus out the religious context or background rhetoric of past arguments that have been outlived and outdated for quite a while, just circular, right?
I'm not sure I fully grasp what you're laying down there. Secular spirit, do you know what Kyle's talking about here?
Kyle, do you want to?
I haven't really got into it yet.
Okay, all right. Well, then proceed.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Okay. Well, when it comes to the meaning of life, I'd like to ask both of you your formed opinion before I say my statement, and ask you your opinion afterwards of what you think, kind of thing there. So what do you guys think? Is there a meaning of life? Yay, nay, what could it be?
Go ahead, secular spirit.
Well, Kyle, I would say for me, and this is, especially because I did come from a religious background where I was told the meaning of life was to worship God and to be with God. Once I left that, I had to really figure out, okay, so what is the meaning of life? And what I realized was one of the reasons why I was still believing when I was believing was because I was afraid of the possibility that there was no meaning to life, that life is inherently meaningless. And the conclusion I came to was to, instead of fearing that as a possibility or maybe even as a reality, to accept that until I saw evidence of otherwise. So I would say for me personally, I don't think life has any inherent objective meaning, but that doesn't mean that you and I as individuals, or us as a human species or individual societies, can't make life meanings for ourselves. So I would say I have my own particular view of the meaning of my life that's informed by the society around me and the things that I want to live by and the things that I want to challenge and oppose. I can get more specific if we want to get down that road, but maybe I'll let you, MD Aware, answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think I broadly agree. This is a sort of, a bit of a sticky question, just in terms of, the language that we use. But I mean, I would agree. I think that there are meanings to individuals' lives that they self-ascribe, or perhaps others ascribe to them, to their lives, that they may or may not agree with, or they may or may not appreciate. But I mean, is there a meaning of life, as in like all life? Like, are you asking about what is the meaning of like the life of a bacterium, or the life of an animal, or the life of, you know, a plant? Like,
I'm talking about our beyond the individual sense, our collective life in a way.
Collective life of what? Humans, or all living things, all biological entities?
We're talking about humans at the moment.
Okay, and what do you mean by meaning? Do you mean purpose?
Well, yes, in a way. They're kind of intertwined.
So what is the purpose of humanity?
I was just, if there's a general purpose for us as a collective, wouldn't that be a purpose for us as individuals?
No, not necessarily.
Well,
for instance, like
right now, for sure.
Well, like, so I have in my mind what I would like the purpose of humanity to be. But that is not the same as what meaning I ascribe to myself, because, you know, I'll give you an example from like medicine and biology. It's like the purpose of the collection of cells that comprises MD aware is to, you know, sustain the life of the entity MD aware, and, you know, probably to facilitate the replication of, you know, his genetic material. But with that said, there is specialization within that collection of cells. There are the neurons that have a specific function. There are the cardiac myocytes that have a specific function, right? There are the vascular endothelial cells that, you know, carry blood.
I hear what you're saying.
So the analogy is that there can be an overarching purpose to the, you know, purpose of humanity that does not necessarily apply to the individual.
I hear what you're saying. Yes.
So I guess my question is still, what do you mean exactly?
Okay. Well, I'd like to just state my opinion on the matter, kind of thing.
Yeah. Go for it.
I don't think that there's much separating us being humans from the laws of the animal world and the plant kingdom as well, which is, we learned it in science class, which is pretty much Darwinism. All life needs to adapt, survive, and thrive. And if that statement is true, are we adapting, or are we adopting whatever happens to us? I think we're adopting, not adapting. But if
what do you mean by that? I don't understand what you like, the distinction between those terms.
Early adapters and late adopters, that whole concept?
Yeah, explain that to me.
Well, right now we have change without choice, where whatever topic that we think is beyond us as individuals, we relegate or slough that one thing to God or governments, and that's been the way for a while. And with elected representatives, they make a choice that some make impacts on our lives as individuals, and those choices that the representatives make for us is change without choice, right? And that's the way it's been for all of our lives and for the longest time. But I'm thinking there's such a thing as change, the choice to change, right? And that's an individual, not top-down hierarchy thing. It's a voluntary realization and actualization process, right? And it's just by knowing that we're not adapting to our times, we're just adopting whatever happens today and justifying tomorrow, which is getting us nowhere because we're it's the way it is mentality instead of going the way it could be or should be is more interesting and gives us the hope and optimism that we seek today. And if we can come to common ground about what we would like as a desired outcome, those things combine our individual thoughts, actions, and behaviors towards the same ends. So no one needs to be told what to do. If we know what our desired outcome is, then you can imagine how you can do your part to help. And so the why and the how matters, but the who does what, when, and where is totally spontaneous. And that spontaneous order is the opposite or equal to the traditional top-down, right?
What do you think, Secular Spirit? I'll give you first shot.
Sure. I mean, I think I understand what you're sharing, Kyle. I would just say that I think that is what we are doing as a human species right now. All of the major conflicts, disagreements that we're seeing in life today between, secularism and religion, between isolationism and globalization, and all of these sorts of things are us trying to come up with a consensus of what our meaning is, what our purpose should be, and what we should be doing going forward. So it's one of those things where I feel like we as individuals do play a part, and our institutions also play a part, and it's all kind of interwoven. So I think we actually are doing this. And even just us having this conversation right now, even though it's just between us and the couple hundred people watching, is part of that.
What do you think, Kyle?
I think that we have one system that we were born into and have. And what I'm talking about is the best case scenario, which we are not living in, is not our reality kind of thing. And we are adapting in ways, but it's non-voluntary in the individual sense to us right now, where it can be completely voluntary for us to adapt to the times, because we live in very difficult times where there's hazards today that did not exist before 2000. And if we don't adapt to those current existing hazards, your survival, your thrival is in danger. And that's probably why we're in such a poor state right now.
So what do you think that people should be doing that they're not?
Well, right now, we've been divided and conquered, mind, body, and spirit, through government and religions. And that dividing and conquer, the pinning against each other, has prevented us from working together and forming that third mind dynamic, when minds come together, and each mind that comes together adds more to it to make more possible, because no individual can know it all and no individual can do it all, but we can do it all together, and nothing could be unknown, because I can devote my life towards one specific topic. You can devote your life to a completely different topic, and between us, we know it. But I don't know. And
Kyle, I have a question can I ask Kyle a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What you mentioned, the best case scenario that we don't have right now, but that we should be striving for. So what is this best case scenario that you have in mind that you want each of us doing our little part working towards?
Well, I do believe that there is the conventional path that we're on right now, and what, for the lack of better words, the natural path that we never step foot on, that if we weren't born in the specific circumstance, that person existing in that world would be your natural experience, that we don't have any of it right now, kind of thing, right? and we were born in the society which civilization was, every part of it was born from the mind. Every idea made into reality, that every doorknob you look at, every object you look at once was a concept made into reality. And our whole human world is man-made, artificial, synthetic. And
so, Kyle, are you suggesting that we should, like, Fight Club style, blow up all of civilization and return to like a hunter-gatherer, small tribal
no
of existence? What do you suggest? Like, I truly don't understand what you're suggesting.
What's the difference between our modern day society and the advanced civilizations of the ancient past that we don't understand today? What's the big difference?
I don't think that there are super advanced civilizations in the past. I think that our modern civilization is more advanced than any civilization that has come before us.
And why don't we know how they built the pyramids and all the great mysteries?
We have a pretty good idea of how they built the pyramids.
I think you're in a little bit of denialism at the moment. Sorry, bud. Like,
oh, really?
There is stuff in the old world that we can't explain today and we can't replicate today. I think that
I don't think that's true. We've built much more impressive structures, and we've built, the fact that people point to like the pyramids, for example, is not a very compelling reason for, people who have a background in sciences or engineering, because there are much more sophisticated systems that have been built since then. For instance, the ability to land on the moon, right? Which is like many decades old. Yeah, that is much more impressive feat than building pyramids.
But Kyle, could you answer MD Aware's question of what state you want us to return to, like when he made that Fight Club comparison? Like what is the natural state you're talking about, just so we can understand?
I'm not advocating we go back to tribalism. I'm advocating we go back to advancing our civilization to do the things that we think is undoable today, but you disagree at the moment.
Well, Kyle, like, I don't know how much you know about me, but I have a PhD in biomedical engineering, and I'm in training to be a surgeon, so I'm a medical doctor as well. And the thing that I reflect on a lot is the fact that there are treatments today that are available to the poorest of Canadians. I can't speak for, Americans or those living in a privatized system, but people in a socialized healthcare system, there are treatments available to them today that would not be available to kings 100 years ago, 50 years ago, right? The leaps in, I choose healthcare because I am in that industry, but the leaps just in healthcare technology that have been wrought by our current civilization are frankly, beyond the wildest dreams of people from any prior era in human history. And, I think that is reflected and recapitulated in nearly any other industry that you could point to. I'm sure that people, my colleagues in, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, like remember, there was no real electricity, in the times of ancient Egypt or whatever, so I don't understand how people think that these ancient civilizations were so much more advanced than modern society.
Well, isn't that a lack of imagination a little bit? But
I think it's a lack of gullibility. I'm not willing to watch the History Channel and believe the Ancient Aliens guys.
I was just going to mention that show. Yeah, it reminds me of that stuff. And there's someone else by the name of Graham Hancock who writes a lot of books on the subject of the advanced technologies of ancient civilizations. In a sense, I think it's interesting stuff. And there is an element of we don't know exactly what happened throughout the past of this planet or the human race. We don't know every single thing. So who knows? Maybe there are some advanced technologies that they had that we don't have right now. But I mean, overall, Kyle, I think we're all on the same wavelength in the sense of we see the problems in the world today. We're not happy with a lot of things in the world today. And we should be working together as just individuals at a grassroots level to tackle those issues. I think I would say a lot of people have a consensus about that.
Yeah, I think where the disagreement comes in is what the goal should be.
Well, I haven't heard the goal from Kyle. That's the thing.
Well, we've heard sort of a vague goal of returning to our ancient civilization majesty. I'll give you the last word, Kyle. We should move along to another call, but I'll give you the last word on this topic. And I think it's been a good call, so feel free to call back in a future week, whenever, if I'm back or whoever's on next week. Feel free to call in. But hey, I'll give you the last word for this call, Kyle.
This conversation could have been more interesting and constructive if it wasn't approached with skepticism and criticism. Rather, it would have been nice to have a little bit of curiosity and interest just to understand where I'm coming from rather than beat down what I'm trying to share. Because I never
tried to ask you like a whole bunch of times what you mean just so we can understand you better.
Thanks again for the call, Kyle. But if you're going to come onto the show and complain about us being skeptical, you may have called the wrong show.